Bernie Sanders supporters are outraged to discover that over 90,000 votes were thrown out of the New York primary, while Donald Trump's campaign has unveiled an updated tax plan that must be discussed. Meanwhile, shocker of shockers, Facebook conspired to make your news more liberal. Really. This is The Loop. Bernie Sanders. He's like the little engine that could, but won't. He's trailing Hillary Clinton by 283 pledged delegates with legitimately no way to make up the difference, but his supporters are still rabid as ever. Take, for example, the Burners of New York, who found out this week that some 90,000 affidavit votes from their primary were straight up thrown out and disregarded. Like 90,000 Martin O'Malley's taken by the breeze. Well, holy crap, there it is, voter fraud. We've been defrauded, hoodwinked, took even. Sanders supporters lambasted the New York City Board of Elections, demanding a recount of the votes, and why shouldn't they? 90,000 votes, that could be enough to prove that political android Hillary Clinton didn't win New York. Bernie can still win this, right? In the immortal words of Darth Vader, Hillary Clinton won New York by nearly 300,000 votes. So yeah, this situation is about as fair as any crane game that isn't play till you win, but gang, I'm sorry, it's over. Bernie Sanders isn't going to have some miraculous come-from-behind victory. What he can do, and is doing by staying in the race, is continue to push Hillary Clinton's policies and the political conversation further to the left and make the party more progressive. Hillary Clinton will almost assuredly be the Democratic nominee. Yay. And hey, for anyone who still considers Donald Trump's presidential candidacy to be a joke, it's time to wake up and smell the self-tanner. In a recent Reuters poll, Trump was practically even with Hillary Clinton, with 40% of the pollees saying they'd vote for him versus 41% who claimed they'd vote for Clinton and 19% who were undecided. Now, polls are like antioxidants. People talk about them a lot when they want to seem smart, but they have no proof that they mean anything at all. Well, think of them as teeny tiny, Polly Pocket-sized elections, where people cast their vote, but the result doesn't haunt us for 4 years. So why is this poll important? Well, for perspective, in the last Reuters poll just 1 week ago, Trump was 13 points behind Clinton. Now he's 1 point behind her. That's close enough to sniff her hair, which would be decidedly inappropriate. This is a massive surge of support, likely spurred on by Trump clinching the Republican nomination last Tuesday. Or it could be something else. Again, antioxidants. I'm sure that they do something, but at the end of the day, we're just guessing. So now that Trump is the presumptive nominee, Republicans have been buzzing about how he can unite the Republican Party, because, in case you forgot, they're more divided than One Direction, which, as sad as the comparison is, would make Jeb Bush the Republican Zayn Malik.
Please clap.
But if you thought that the Donald was gonna sell out like some poser and unite the party, you thought wrong. To the surprise of no one except these mostly whites, Donald Trump just cranked the volume on his inherent Donaldness, attacking Hillary Clinton's marriage on Twitter and ramping up his signature schoolyard name-calling. Collect them all. Crooked Hillary, Crazy Bernie, Dr. Ben Carson. Hell yeah. However, when pressed on his behavior rather than own it as he has in the past, Donald Trump kinda said that his antics are all his supporters' fault. In an interview with the New York Times, Trump claimed that he had a, quote, mandate from his supporters to run as an outsider rather than a traditional politician. That's your defense? There's a big difference between an outsider and a sideshow act. Mr. Trump, there are lots of ways to be an outsider, and none of them involve making sure that everyone knows that your little Donnie Dangler is huge. Don't put your conduct on your supporters. You're a human being. You can decide how you want to run your campaign for president yourself. The job that you're going for is literally the decider. Copyright George W. Bush, 2006. Now, Trump is, in the short term, smart for sticking to his guns. The Republican Party has done jack squat to get him elected, and his loud, raucous, unapologetic persona is what brought him this far. However, to say that this one-man circus is all that his supporters will respond to is honestly an insult to the very people that want to put him in office. That'd be like if we, SourceFed, said that you, our audience, would only watch videos about Drake, vaginas, and giant spiders. And yet, here you are, watching The Loop every Saturday on SourceFed. Your supporters are smarter than you give them credit for, Mr. Trump. I think they'll still elect you if you act like a president instead of, I don't know, taking credit for Budweiser changing their beer's name to America, which is an actual thing that happened this week. Hey, America! Yes, you, the beer. Don't worry about making yourself great again. You taste like an ashtray that pissed into a glass of dishwater. Try being great for the first time. However, Mr. Trump isn't just making wisecracks and blowing up your Twitter feed. His campaign is hard at work on a revised tax plan, as his previous tax plan would have increased the national deficit by $10 trillion over the next 10 years. If it helps, that's the same as 280 Mark Zuckerbergs. So what does that mean? Well, every year the government sets a budget for spending across everything: the military, education, Easter egg rolls, and pardons for turkeys. When the government spends more than that year's budget, we have what's called a budget deficit, and that gets added to our national debt. The United States is currently $19.3 trillion in debt, or 540 Zuckerbergs. If you posted that on Facebook, I'd probably react with this face. No one wants another 280 Zuckerbergs worth of debt. So how's the new plan? It's a huge improvement, shrinking 280 Zucks to only 174 Zucks, or 3.8 trillion. That's a victory for everyone. No matter where you land politically, less is less, right? For contrast, Bernie Sanders' proposed budget and tax plan would increase the deficit by $18 trillion, or 504 Zuckerbergs over the same period. So how does a tax plan work? Well, depending on how much you make in income per year, you fall into a tax bracket and you pay that bracket's tax rate. For example, if you're in the lowest bracket, you pay the government 10% of your income in taxes. But if you're in the highest bracket, you pay 39.6% in taxes. Only the top 1% of Americans are in that bracket. So what does the Trump tax plan look like? There are 3 brackets: 15%, 25%, and 28%. Now, it's a great plan if you make under $10,000 a year, as you wouldn't actually have to pay taxes. But if you're making less than $10,000 a year, you're likely eating shoe leather to survive, and that's the least of your concerns. But look at that top bracket. That's the single largest tax cut for the rich in history, at a time when the top 1% of Americans control over half of our nation's wealth, while most Americans will receive little to no cuts at all. Mr. Trump, dumb question, I'm sure that you've thought of it, but wouldn't you be able to slash that deficit way more by keeping that top bracket 30% or higher? What's that? You're right, I am a dummy and a loudmouth. God bless America. The beer, not the country. America, like drinking antifreeze without the sweet release of death. And hey, if you're one of those people saying that they'll move to Canada if Trump's elected, but need Canadian citizenship, look no further than MapleMatch.com, the new, very real, very Canadian dating site that connects Canadian singles with frantic liberals trying to escape their loud blonde nightmare. There are currently 4,150 people on the site, and good news, America, you'll have plenty of folks to choose from, as 70% of users are Canadian. Gizmodo broke the story this week that Facebook, the billion-dollar data vacuum, social network, has been routinely suppressing conservative news and news sources in the trending section of their site. This is important because Facebook isn't a news organization. As an open social platform, it's meant to be a neutral place for everyone to network socially. The trending section of Facebook is supposed to be, the topics that are actually trending on Facebook, spat out by an algorithm, but instead the company hired so-called news curators to decide what news you should see, which is absurd because while they felt that the Drudge Report wasn't worth my time, apparently I can't miss the trailer for the new Voltron cartoon. What if I haven't seen the new Assassin's Creed trailer? What will happen to my family's future if I don't read about Nintendo's new mobile games? One former curator told Gizmodo it was absolutely biased. We were doing it subjectively. It just depends on who the curator is and what time of day it is. Every once in a while, a red state or conservative news source would have a story, but we would have to go and find the same story from a more neutral outlet that wasn't as biased. Not only would they suppress conservative sources and stories, Facebook would also inject stories from the Huffington Post, BBC.com, and the New York Times into the trending section, even if they weren't trending on the site at all. This is highly unethical. For years, liberals have been furious, and rightly so, that Fox News paints itself as fair and balanced while clearly displaying a conservative point of view on the news. But here's a supposedly fair and balanced platform doing basically the same thing. And before anyone says that Facebook isn't publicly neutral with its politics, isn't it? The homepage doesn't say, Facebook, we're down with big government, or Facebook, the separation of church and state is important, or Facebook, war is for dum-dums. The most political thing on the homepage is where it says it's free and always will be, which is as political as a fart in an elevator. It's free, but that doesn't mean that it supports gay marriage. Senate Republicans are now actively seeking an answer from Mark Zuckerberg on these allegations. Facebook has publicly denied them twice now, claiming that it doesn't censor the topics and stories that naturally trend on the site. Instead, they hire human editors who, quote, disregard junk or duplicate topics, hoaxes, or subjects with insufficient sources. Maybe it's just me, but I can't remember the last time I saw a pro-Republican article in my trending section. But you better believe I know the names of the 4 houses at the US Wizarding School and Fantastic Beasts and where to find them, and I am not pleased. Horned serpent, really rolling, Roll. So now I want to hear from you. How do you feel about the votes that were thrown out of the New York Democratic primary? How do you feel about Trump's tax plan? And how do you feel about Facebook suppressing conservative viewpoints? Let me know down in the comments below, and keep your feedback coming on The Loop. This format is still evolving and changing, and your thoughts are so necessary to the process. Tell me what kinds of stories you want to see in the future. I'm Matt Lieberman, and until next time, you're in The Loop. Thanks for watching. Following Tuesday's Indiana primaries, both Senator Ted Cruz and Governor John Kasich have dropped out of the race for... I don't know.
Oh my gosh, I know exactly what you're talking about.